They run it. Oh, they got the ball.
Snap. The kick is no good.
Throw. Johnson's there. It is touchdown. Touchdown. Calvin Johnson.
Trying to stretch to the edge. What a hurdle by Johnson. Highlight reel touchdown.
He might score. Taylor, touchdown. 48 yards.
Don't sleep on those legs. Oh, he faked the slide. Sauce time. Pickett.
And Leary's going to take a shot. Has a receiver. It is caught.
In the second week of ACC play, rain was a common theme. 6 games had rain affect the game either by direct competition or by delay. Nevertheless, football was played. Let's see how the teams did. In a dominant Week 2 game, the Cardinals got it done against the Murray State Racers. They looked very good both offensively and defensively, although Jack Plummer did throw 2 interceptions, with one being at the end of the first half on a Hail Mary pass, so you can't really fault him for that. Louisville did start 9 quarterbacks in this game, which was very interesting to see, but nevertheless, a dominant win for the Cardinals as they march on undefeated. And it looks like they're living up to the media hype that people had them at. But they have yet to have a true test in the sense of Notre Dame, Miami, and Duke, who are coming up on their schedule and are all ranked opponents. So we'll have to see how it unfolds for the Cardinals. In one of the 2 ACC versus SEC matchups this week, Wake Forest was able to comfortably handle Vanderbilt as the Deacons intercepted A.J. Swan twice on their way to a 36-20 victory. Mitch Griffiths once again looked good. He had 2 touchdowns and a 77.9 quarterback rating. And they were able to get it done on the ground as well. The top 2 rushers for the Deacons combined for 288 yards. Only 1 touchdown though, but it seems like the offense is in good hands this year against Power 5 opponents. They should be able to compete. Not sure how well they'll stack up to the higher talent levels of the ACC since this was a game against Vanderbilt, but overall a really positive week for the Demon Deacons. Once again, Notre Dame claims the soul of an ACC team. This is now their 29th straight win against an ACC opponent in the regular season. Sure, NC State hung around for 3 quarters of this game, but ultimately I think Notre Dame was destined to win this game. Top to bottom, front to back, they were better than the Wolfpack. And to be fair, the Wolfpack kind of destroyed themselves in the 4th quarter with those 2 costly interceptions thrown by Brennan Armstrong and the receivers having as many drops as they did. They also allowed Notre Dame too many explosive plays with their long touchdowns both through the air and on the ground. Sam Hartman looks like a Heisman candidate, and honestly the Irish may be going to the college football playoff this year. Of course it depends on how they play against Ohio State and USC, but it looks like they're a legit team. They're at least going to a New Year's Six Bowl with the defense that they have and how they're able to put up points. For NC State, you really have to focus on the passing struggles. The receivers have to get on page with Brennan Armstrong with the routes that they're running, and they have to be way more consistent catching the ball. Defensively, you have to stop those explosive plays and get back to the form that you're playing with in 2022. The Jackets finally get a win for Brent Key in his first full year as the head coach of the Georgia Tech football program. Haynes King looked amazing this game. He threw 4 touchdown passes, only had 8 incompletions, and the Jackets might have some hope next week against the Ole Miss Rebels. Offensively, they look like they can put up points. It all depends on the defense if they can stop the Rebel run game in Mississippi. It's going to be a tough challenge, but this was a great tune-up game for them to get everything figured out before they head into a hostile SEC environment. And I would not be surprised if that game is a lot closer than what the spread has it as. I think it's 20 points right now, but running the ball, they got 268 yards and 2 scores. This team could still be very dangerous even with their loss to Louisville. In a game that was affected the most by rain, it was a defensive slog in the second half between Purdue and Virginia Tech. Both teams were unable to move the ball, and the Hokies didn't help themselves by turning it over twice. After all the offensive fireworks that went off in the first half, unfortunately Virginia Tech could not get it done and lost to the Boilermakers in what was a very physical, run-heavy game because of the elements. Virginia Tech had some bright moments on both sides of the ball, and I don't think this is a game where you can really panic just because of how much the rain caused the game to shift. Hudson Card played well for Purdue, getting them the go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter with 8 minutes left. Great Wells, he does need to clean up the interceptions. He had 2 today that were very costly for the Hokies. Defensively, though, they played great. It's still offensive troubles for Virginia Tech. In the second matchup between the ACC and SEC this week, Miami and Texas A&M had a thriller of a game in South Florida. Texas A&M got out to a 10-point lead, but then it was all Miami from there on as they came back, took the lead, and offensively outproduced the Aggies. Tyler Van Dyke went out of his mind with 5 touchdown passes, 9 incompletions, 374 yards. Absolutely crazy. Rushing, Miami wasn't all that special, only 77 yards combined, but they got it done through the air. Jacoby George had 3 touchdowns by himself with only 5 receptions, and Texas A&M just couldn't keep up with the Hurricanes. And Miami was really better on all 3 phases of the ball. They had a special teams touchdown, and they were able to intercept Connor Wigman and really just prove that they were the better team in this game. And Miami looks like they can be a legit contender. They're now ranked in the AP poll, and they're going to have an absolute showdown with Florida State when they play them. The U very well may be back, and if you're Texas A&M, this might be the time to start actually considering to fire Jimbo Fisher, because if he can't beat Miami at this point, I don't think he's going to win anything in College Station. This game proved one thing: Carolina is still very, very fraudulent. This game was way closer than it had to be. Going to double overtime with the Mountaineers at home is just ridiculous for what UNC wants to be and what Drake May wants to be on the national stage. This is not a Heisman Trophy candidate performance by him, and this is not a ranked team performance against a Group of 5 team at all. I mean, you really have to look at yourself and think about where you actually want to be and what you're actually doing in terms of being a serious Power 5 program, because you can't keep having these close games with a Group of 5 team if you want to be the ACC champion or in consideration for national awards at a certain position level, or just the best player in college football for a season. Yeah, they ended up winning, but it definitely wasn't impressive. And I think you should be very fortunate that you were 17 in the AP poll, because if you were on the edge of the poll, you probably would have lost the ranking simply for how close this game was. And what in the world is it with you not being able to get a kicker? I mean, the guy shanks the field goal twice at the end of the game, absolutely ridiculous. In the ACC's first game on the CW network, they were treated to a absolute thriller between Cincinnati and Pitt, with the Bearcats getting out to an early lead in the first half, leading 20-7, and then extending that to 27-7. Pitt did make a late comeback in the fourth quarter that almost got the Panthers the win, but they were stopped short on their last drive. Not a bad loss for Pat Narduzzi's squad. Phil Dracovic obviously needs to do a little bit more to get the offense in production. He missed a lot of throws, but he did have 3 touchdowns, and the run game could also be better. But, again, not a very bad loss. I just have one question. What in the world is going on in Chestnut Hill? I thought Jeff Hafley was worth something as a head coach, but after these past 2 games, I'm having some serious doubts, because you were very close to losing this game to Holy Cross, and you kept them in as much as you could. I mean, you tried to blow this game, and you're very lucky that Holy Cross fumbled on the last drive, and you got it to end the game. Really, Boston College should be 0-2 at this point, and they should be with Virginia in the basement. Absolutely embarrassing to the conference. Jeff Hafley will probably be fired at the end of this year if things don't change, because my God, are they not going to be competitive once conference play comes around. I think Florida State is going to absolutely crush you guys, and it's just a shame that it's the red bandana game. I mean, that game should mean so much to you as a program, and you should perform to a competitive level, but you're just not against the Seminoles. In the first game for the Cavalier football program since the horrible shooting that affected the team, the Cavaliers took on the James Madison Dukes, and as they were trying to get a feel-good win, the Dukes were not following the script as they jump out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter. Virginia, you have to respond, and you sort of do in the first and second quarter, cutting the lead to 3 as you go to halftime, 17-14. Thankfully, in the third quarter, you actually wake up and put up 3 touchdowns to James Madison's 1, making the score 35-24. So just close out this game defensively, and everything should be fine. Yes, a good security touchdown there, make it 35-24. Just stop James Madison on this drive, and you're letting them score. Oh wait, they got the ball back?
Pre-snap survey by McLeod. Into the flats. Wide open.
Touchdown.
Virginia loses in what should have been their feel-good win for their tragedy. It's clear that Clemson is not what they once were. In fact, they were losing at the end of the first quarter in this game against Charleston Southern. It was so unimpressive that they actually fell out of the AP poll this week. Cade Klubnik looks like he's a freshman, and that this offense is not actually going to change for the better for the Tigers, and they're not going to be able to put up points like they need to in this modern era of college football. It may be a while before people start calling for Dava's head there, but in the end, I think Florida State is now the front runner for the conference. They'll probably win the matchup in September. I don't know if Clemson and Florida State will play again for the ACC championship game. I think it'll some other matchup like Duke, possibly Miami, but not the Tigers. In another dominant win for the Orange, they beat around the Western Michigan Broncos in what was a very impressive win. Interestingly, though, Garrett Schrader did not have the passing day that I would have expected him to have. He only threw one touchdown, and it was mainly through the ground that Syracuse got their points. They scored 4 touchdowns. 3 of them were from Quint Allen, who only had 8 carries and 20 yards, so it looks like he's their red zone running back just to pound out some last yardage situations. Syracuse looked impressive defensively. They had a pick 6 in this game, and they looked good. In another dominant win, Duke got it done on the ground, although Riley Leonard was a perfect 12 for 12 passing in what turned into a rain fest in the second half for the Blue Devils. They look like a legitimate team that could be a title contender, or at least in the running for the ACC championship game with the head start they have with a win against Clemson. They're going to be a very difficult team to stop with their rushing attack and how prolific it is. They had 261 yards with 4 touchdowns, and Riley Leonard threw for 1. So far, the Seminoles look like the most complete team in the conference with their win in Week 1 against LSU. It will only remain to be seen how dominant they are when they travel to Clemson on the road and how much they beat the Tigers by. Because I think their offense looks a lot better than Clemson's does, and their defense looks just as dominant as Clemson's can be. And I think Florida State just might have a national title team on their hands this year in Tallahassee. A lot of weapons are on the field on both sides of the ball.